So, Judah, something that I hear quite a bit online is this idea of a reincarnation soul trap. And some of my viewers have expressed concern and even fear over this topic. And I was wondering if you could speak to that, whether or not it's true.
Yes, we can speak to this.
Welcome back. I am here today with Anjie Hipple. Today, she channels the group of beings called Judah, and we're going to learn all about her story today. Angie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I would love to hear your story going back a little ways. Something that really fascinates me about your story is that you've said that you had an entire journey earlier on in your life to alleviate your suffering. And that's something I very much relate to. And I would love to hear what that process was like for you and how it began.
Sure, sure. Well, my earliest memory of there being something out there beyond us in the unseen realm, I was probably 5 or 6. I remember going to church with my grandmother. My parents didn't take me to church. Laying my head in her lap and looking up at the stained glass window and seeing this beautiful man with long hair and thinking, how lovely and loving he seemed and just kind of fascinated. And so from a young age, I was drawn to meet this Jesus or angels or whatever was out there. And so I was raised ultimately in a really strictly fundamentalist Christian paradigm. But inside of me, there were parts that I could assent to, that I could give agreement to, and there were other parts that didn't feel right to me. And so somehow inside I was always sifting and sorting and sifting and sorting. Like all of us, the common thing that I find with everyone I talk to in this work is all of us are suffering inside to some degree. We're suffering at the hands of our thoughts, at the hands of our feelings, old traumas, maybe even past life karma that's kind of following us around or like a ball and chain on our legs. And yet we think that we're the only ones, right? Which is the big lie. And so I struggled like everybody else. And going back to the sifting and sorting thing, one of the first things Judas said to me was that God is like a grandmother in the kitchen sifting flour. And I loved that image. I don't think most of us women sift flour anymore like our grandmothers did, but you do that in order to get the lumps out, the lumps and the bumps in order to refine it and make it so tasty. And so this is our spiritual process, right? Is just letting life and the universe and whatever God is sift and sort and get the lumps and bumps out. So, I was raised, as I said, in this fundamentalist Christian home. I followed that tradition up until my mid-40s. I had the gamut of everything between real experiences with Jesus and the Holy Spirit to spiritual abuse and heinous shame and guilt and legalism and everything in between, right? But but there's mercy and help all along the way for the journey. And I did have a major awakening about 6 years ago. As with many people, there was a death involved. I think for a lot of us, sometimes there's a trauma or a big loss that kinda wakes us up and directs us to begin questioning and doing more of that serious sifting and sorting. My dad died, and suddenly I was left with a family business to run. Several of my family members and another other family were dependent on the income from it. It was a car dealership. I knew nothing about it. I was raising 3 teenagers. Actually, my oldest was out of the house at that time, but I had teenagers at home and I was teaching school full time and volunteering, leading worship and in my church and so much going on. Well, all of it just crumbled, right? It was like a Jenga game. It was like some being out there in the universe just pulled out the one piece that was, gonna let all of my stuff collapse on my ego, and so I really had to face what I believed, the truth about what was working for me and what wasn't, face a lot of pain. I got to a place where I couldn't repress things anymore. My nice girl act wasn't working, and but at the same time, there was this incredible joy, right? Just incredible joy and freedom. Like, I could it's like I could smell it, right? Like, I could smell, there's something good happening here. So there were a lot of other things that happened in the wake of that midlife crisis or whatever you wanna call it, and thank God I didn't buy a red sports car or anything like that, but instead, I used it as an opportunity to kinda dig deep and go inside, and my marriage of 27 years ended. Somewhere in there, I contracted COVID and was chronically ill for 2 years, and just spent a lot of time looking inside and surrendering and letting go on a really deep level, and even facing my fear of death, you know? And right at the end of all of that, Judah came and just kinda out of the blue, like, out of nowhere, like, if you had said to me 5 or 6 years ago, "Oh, you're gonna be a channeler," I would have probably laughed in your face. Right. I it wasn't on my bucket list of things to do in life.
Wow. So tell us about your first experience with Judah.
Yeah. So as I said, I'd been chronically ill for 2 years. I have an old recliner in my living room. It's still there today. I probably spent 85% of that 2 years in that chair doing nothing but meditating and facing my crap inside. And so one day towards the end of this time, I was thinking about my grandchild. My 3rd grandchild was getting ready to be born, and I knew I couldn't go and be there because I wasn't physically well enough to go, and I was heartbroken. So I was just letting it go, right? I was just sitting there sending love to my daughter, to this new little baby, and just feeling the grief, that I couldn't be there and letting it go. And that night, my husband and I were watching a channeler, a beautiful channeler named Wendy Kennedy on the television. And my husband looked at me, he said, "You could do that." And I was like, "Okay." Right? Like, whatever. I mean, it is something that I could do sitting in a recliner, so maybe that's a good option. And I was just open for whatever, right? So that night when I went to bed, I had this profound metaphysical experience that's gonna sound crazy when I tell it, but it's absolutely real for me. I experienced as if this little baby, my grandbaby, was in my body. I could feel his head pushing down on my pelvic floor. I could feel my womb contracting like it does with those pre-birth, contractions that you have, and I could sense his little spirit, and he was telling me what kind of person he was and why he was coming to the earth, and it was just this profound experience. So when I got up in the morning, I sat down, I thought, "This is the channeling thing, something's going on here," and I started typing, and I had this whole message from these beings that called themselves Judah, telling me about this little boy, and that was it. That was the beginning, and so that night, I read to my husband when he got home from work, "Listen to this is what happened." I read him the message. We said, "What do we do next?" "Well, let's just sit here and meditate," which was an uncommon thing for us to do. So we sat on the couch to meditate, and within a few seconds, this big, huge voice came barreling through my body, and there it was Judah, and it's been a love affair ever since, right? We're just totally in love with Judah.
Wow, incredible. I have so many questions,
Please.
but I'll start with this one. So what did it feel like to channel Judah, or what was that experience like when that voice came through you?
Well, I felt completely at ease and relaxed and peaceful, and there wasn't any fear involved because their presence is just so loving. It's kind of like, let's say you were at an event, right? And your hero came to this event. And you were the speaker of the hour, but your hero just walked in, like the one person on the planet you wish could be there for your special moment, and you just instinctively give the mic to them because they have so much more to say than you do. And they're the person you look up to the most in the world. So this is what it felt like, right? It felt so natural to just let them speak through me. I could just feel them kind of merge in with my body. I didn't feel intruded on in any way or hijacked. I just felt like I'd come home. It was lovely.
Amazing. So, who is Judah? Tell us about who they are. As I understand it, they're a collective of beings.
Yes. So, it took over a course of time, I got to know them and more about them. And so at this point, my understanding is that they are a higher dimensional collective of angels that were created by Source. They are angelic in nature. They didn't originate as humans or some other interstellar race. And there's about 350,000 of these individual angelic souls in the collective. And so my understanding is that my connection with them is that at some point I decided to I am a part of the Judah family, one of the souls of that collective. And at some point I decided to be incarnated many lifetimes ago as a human and try on this thing called being human. And so that's why they feel so natural to me because they're my soul family. And they are from, Sirius B, and they're just kind of lion-like in their nature and in their manner.
I've heard that with groups of higher dimensional beings like this, that it's almost like they're so highly evolved that they share one mind and that any one of them can be the spokesperson, but it's as if they're all one mind. Is that resonate with you?
Yeah, so, I mean, for them, they're constantly preferring and deferring to one another. They're not like humans, they're not competitive, or they don't need to be seen or heard, or have any sort of agenda on an individual level, so they really love moving together as one and speaking as one. So they're kind of like one of the early pictures they gave me is if you've ever seen a swarm of birds, it can be really fascinating. You might see thousands moving together, in unity. That's how they operate.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And that I've heard that theme come up quite a bit, like even with people describing near death experiences and describing the light. I think David Bennett was the one who said that he compared it to a swarm of fish or a flock of birds, like all of them moving with one mind.
Exactly. It's exactly like that.
Mm,
And you just kind of get caught up in it, right? And
mm.
and you feel like you kind of merge in with them and there's a kind of a sense of a loss of boundaries. Like they don't think, as humans, boundaries can seem really important to us, especially in this modern day, but they don't think in terms of boundaries, right? They just are constantly merging in with whatever is love and life-giving.
Yeah. So I'd like to ask you a few questions of information that you might have from Judah or that maybe Judah shared with you. And then I'd like to come back to your story and ask you some questions about your personal story, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the first question I have is, has Judah given you any information on the larger picture, why we are here living as humans?
Sure, sure. Well, I'll just let Judah answer that. As much as possible, I love for them to speak for themselves. Just like if I was at a dinner party, I wouldn't want my husband to answer questions directed at me. I would like for him to let me do that. So we'll just
Right.
let her. Yeah.
Okay,
And if
perfect.
you have, other interjections as they get started, just jump in. More questions on what they're saying. Yes, yes. Well, dear, listen, listen. anyone listening to a broadcast such as this one is awakening or fully awakened already. Even the ones who are curious and a bit skeptical, there's something leading you, pulling you towards towards this love-covered life. Yes, 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 a dream of loving being a highly loving being, a person who flows naturally in a loving state, effortlessly without resistance. So anyone listening to a broadcast such as this is on your way to fully realizing your destiny. And so this is a very important question you're asking. Why am I here? Why am I here? Not because of what my boss wants me to do, or my spouse, or my children, or my culture, or my family, or my religious parties or political parties. No, those are not the reasons why I am here. And you see, so it is normal for all of you as this vessel to reach a point, hopefully earlier than later, but many times later in midlife or beyond, in which you say, what's the point? What's the point of all of it? The point of all of it is for you to wake up and know why you want to be here. When you die, when you cross over, when you look down at the body that you inhabited for however many years, what is it that you want to know that you were, that you became, that you embodied, that you exuded? What is the presence? What is the energetic imprint you want to leave on the world? Whatever that is the purpose of your soul. That is the purpose. Yes. So you must wake up and spend time contemplating this. What is it that I want to be more than any other things in the world? And understand, we're not talking about roles. We're not talking about identification with tasks or purposes or goals or skills. We are talking about who you are at your core essence. And meditation is an excellent place in order to discover this. What is it all about? It is about playing. It is about experiencing. You see, this vessel, the purpose she has set out for her soul is to create energies and atmospheres of divine love so that humans can get free and become the enlightened being which they have forgotten they are. That is why she is here. So anything she does is in alignment with that. And whatever she does that is not in alignment with that feels terribly uncomfortable. It is like putting her foot in hot lava, you see. And this is the mark and the sign of those who are moving towards enlightenment. They are more and more urgent about being aligned with the purpose of their soul. So consider, you are here to do what? What is your contribution to the earth at this time? And what impact will that contribution have? What is your contribution to Mother Earth and to your fellow humans, plants and animals, and what will be the result of it? And begin to align and live by that. Now, you asked the bigger picture. We want to share with you an experience this vessel had last week that sums it up for her, and perhaps it will be meaningful to someone listening. In this experience, she entered what you sometimes call the void. Everything was black, black everywhere. No sound, no stars, no light, no nothing. The void. And she, in this experience, was the observer of this void. And there in the void appeared a man, very nondescript, nothing special about this man, but he represented all that is, the creator of all that is. And he was holding a board game. A board game. You would recognize this as something you might buy in the store, like Monopoly or so on. And this board game was quite large. It was magnificently large, and it was sealed shut. And within it, she knew instinctively every possibility, billions upon billions, innumerable possibilities of things that could transpire were sealed up in this board game and held in the hands of the creator. What was the message we wanted her to take away from this experience? It's all a game. It's all a game. It's all a game. You see, it's a game of possibilities, billions of possibilities. You will create them in conjunction with the creator. The creator holds this whole game in his or her hands, innumerable possibilities. So don't take yourselves too seriously. It's all a game, you see, and play the game any way you wish. Any way you wish, but you can play it in ways that will cause you to suffer and others as well. Or you can play the game in ways that causes your soul to win and your soul to rejoin all the vast possibilities of divine love and goodness.
Judah, thank you so much for that answer. I love the analogy of the board game and the endless possibilities. So, building on that information, is there any truth to the idea that we hear quite a bit in the spiritual community that we're here to learn about love and that we're going through a spiritual evolution?
Yes, absolutely. And we would say the learning is your sorting and sifting to find the experience of yourself as love, for you are love. You are love. Yes, your cells, your essence, the core of what you are, the part of you that is eternal and indestructible and everlasting, it is love. And so the learning really is more akin to forgetting what you've been told, forgetting your experiences in this life and and in the prior lives that conditioned you to think there is a lack of love, that there's not enough love, that there's not enough love to go around either for you or others. Or even if you've begun to experience some measures of divine love, you may at times feel like, oh no, I don't have enough love for everyone else. But we assure you this is an untruth. We want to tag and treat that lie right now for everyone who is listening. If you will give us your permission, we're going to tag and treat the lie right now that there's not enough love and you do not have enough love either for yourself or to give. The truth is, you embody love. You are love. You are a magical kitchen, as the master, Don Miguel Ruiz, has taught us. You are a magical kitchen, and in this kitchen there is an everlasting pantry packed full of love. And you could make up your pies and pizzas and treats for others on the planet. You could make them and make more and more and more and more, and you would never run out of this vast supply of love in the pantry of your inner being. Yes.
I love that so much, an everlasting pantry packed full of love. I'm a baker, so that speaks to
Oh,
me.
aha, Judah must have known that about you.
So I'd love to ask Judah if they could share about the significance of the shift that we're going through right now and where we're headed.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, we would say there's never nearly enough attention given to the beauty that is happening in the personal and collective levels of consciousness of people on this planet. And for your work in this space, we give you thanks because it takes discipline and courage to detach from what is being said about what is happening on the planet. There is plenty of low vibe, low consciousness things afoot. Anyone sees and knows that. However, there are masses of people who are quickly and swiftly, with acceleration, entering into their enlightened state. This vessel works with them every week, every week, every week. She is working in sessions with persons who begin to channel, who establish viable, intimate, living relationships with angels and higher beings who receive their messages, who enter into states of satori and bliss, and who begin to operate in divine love, joy, and peace. So this shift is happening. It is happening quickly, more quickly than ever before on the earth because of media outlets such as yours. And we are able to utilize these outlets as open channels to bring in frequencies and experiences of high love and freedom.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Judah. I have a question about something that I heard in a previously channeled message that was shared in an interview that I was watching, where I heard you say that when people, this is kind of a different topic, but when someone dies and passes on and greets maybe relative in on the other side or a religious figure or something like that, that being is a creation of their psyche. So does that mean that they're not actually seeing their loved one, that it's all in their mind, or is there another explanation for that?
That's a great question. So we can most certainly encounter any soul in the universe at any time. So let's say if I've lost my father, I can speak to my father's soul right now. I can speak to him when I cross over and I leave the body. So all souls are accessible to you for communication at any time in any realm of time and space, whether you are in the body or out of the body, whether the soul you are communicating with is in the body or out of the body, you may communicate with them. Now, we will speak to our earlier comment. You see, when one crosses over, we are not in the habit of startling anyone. We respect everyone's perspective and point of view. And so, if one, let's say, has spent their life in service to the Buddha or to the Christ, they may receive or meet Source in this new realm of heaven, we will call it, for lack of a broader word, as the Buddha or as the Christ or as the one that they are their perspective lends them to see. You see, so source is, as the Bhagavad Gita says, when Arjuna met Krishna, he saw billions of arms and billions of eyes. Why did he see the Lord of all in this way? Because you see, the point or the invention or intimation here is that God has billions of facets. You're a facet of God. Jesus is a facet of God. The Buddha is a facet of God. Everyone is a facet of God. And so when one crosses over, you will see the facet of God which you are most able to relate to and receive from. And so, in this sense, it is a creation of your own inner being. We hope that makes a little sense.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense when it comes to religious figures. Would it be the same for loved ones that have passed on? And if you already answered that, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Maybe I missed
yes,
it.
yes, of course. And so, for many, we would say for most, the creation of their heart as they cross over is to be reunited with a loved one that has passed on that they dearly miss. Hmm. Yes.
So, Judah, I just have a couple more questions for you. Something that I hear quite a bit online and hearing more and more as time goes on is this idea of a reincarnation soul trap. And some of my viewers have expressed concern and even fear over this topic. And I was wondering if you could speak to that, whether or not it's true.
Yes, we can speak to this. So understand that. Well, first we want to dispel this fear altogether. We want to say that this fear is not based in truth. And now we'll give you an analogy that we hope will help here. So, if as a loving parent, we are speaking of ourselves as angels, as representatives of source, as a loving parent, if we had one that we were caring for, a young one, let's say who was in kindergarten, when kindergarten was over, it would be natural for us to send them to first grade. What would not be natural would be for us to send them to high school or college. Would you agree? And so
Yes.
understand that if someone dies in a lower level of consciousness, not having mastered areas such as a sense of victimization or a sense of deep grief and despair and so on, it would not make sense for us to move them then in the reincarnation process into a realm that is not befitting their personal level of consciousness, you see. And so, are there those who are living in darker, more dense, and difficult areas of consciousness who reincarnate back to lower and more difficult realms? Yes. But it is not an unkindness or something to be feared. It is more akin to, let's say, a child, perhaps they were a little young for kindergarten, and at the end of their year of kindergarten, the teacher and the parents and everyone who loved and cared for that child recognized that it would probably be best for them to spend another year in kindergarten, you see? So there's no unkindness there. It is simply that everyone involved that loves and cares for the soul will allow them then to reincarnate back into an experience that will help them to master the level of consciousness that needs to be mastered. We hope that that helps you understand,
Mhm.
and we assure you that this fear is unfounded.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Judah, if there's one message that you could share with the viewers, what would that be?
Well, we will tell you that whatever you want and need, we're speaking of a heart level, not an external level, is available to you. We want you to expect miracles. We want you to ask for them, and we want you to look for them. And we want you to drop any agreement that you've made in your inner being that I can't have this for myself. I won't. It won't happen for me. I'm never going to conquer this struggle. Whatever it is that you're telling yourself in your inner being that you can't or you won't or you don't, we want you to drop that altogether, and we want you to know that you create your life and you create it with the grace and assistance of us and many other beings who are your cheerleaders and who have resources and power tools to set you free. So, wherever you've struggled with a certain aspect of your life, of your inner life or your external life, of course, reflecting back to you what is inside of you, know that we have power tools for your assistance. And so if you've been hammering away at a certain thing or sawing away at it, let us come in with our power saws and zip through what ails you, what's sticking you, where you feel stuck. And simply ask for help and then release it. Release and relax. For we have been saying lately many times through this vessel, relax and receive. R&R, R&R, R&R. Relax and receive. Receive and rest. Release and rest. R&R. Vacation. Remember, it's a game. So bring your spiritual experience into a lighter, brighter, easier place of R&R in which you are simply receiving miracles and ease for your journey.
Wow, thank you so much. That was actually right on for me and what's been going on in my day today.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Oh, I actually, just a quick funny story. I was working this morning on getting an interview ready to go out, and I had put some music that was really helping me to connect spiritually and ask for help figuring out the title and all that stuff. And I don't even know, it was my first time connecting with whoever it was, but it felt like really loving beings just came in and said, "Look, we can't help you with that right now. We need to work on chilling you out." And all of a sudden I realized I was so tense and I had this huge knot in my chest that I hadn't even been aware of just because of the stresses of life.
Right, right. And I love that, listening to your body.
Mhm.
Instead of, in the spiritual life, we can just kind of forget what our mind's saying and listen to our body because our body knows when what we're doing is a yes or a no.
Right. Well, Angie, I'd love to talk a little bit more about your own personal journey.
Sure.
So, you were raised in a Christian setting, as was I, and going from that to channeling, I'm sure that was quite a journey in and of
Uh,
itself.
yeah, absolutely.
I would love to know, you said that you had some experiences, like some real experiences with Jesus as a Christian, and I'd love to know what your views are now on Jesus and what your relationship with Jesus is.
Yeah. Well, I for a while in my awakening, I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. So I'm actually in a process of just rekindling my personal relationship with Jesus. And, when I was little, I guess I was maybe 8 years old. And when I remember my first real encounter with Jesus or with the unseen realm, and I was sitting in a church service and I was listening to, a classic fundamentalist sermon about sin and death and hell and Jesus. And I remember as a little girl listening and thinking, oh, I do not want to be separated from Jesus in this place called hell. That would be the worst thing I could imagine. And as I was feeling that, I literally was surrounded by this feeling of love and bliss. And I was just overcome and just began to weep. And I felt so loved. And I knew that this was Jesus. And so, I didn't know what to do with that. I was just enjoying it. But the man in the pulpit was saying that I needed to go down the aisle and give my heart to Jesus. So my little feet just took me down the aisle because that's, what I was told to do when I was just a little girl, right? Well, now as a grown woman on this journey, I realized that that was my real encounter with this beautiful enlightened man named Jesus, and I feel like it was probably likely facilitated by the Holy Spirit, which is an entity, which is one of those aspects of all that is that Judah was talking about earlier. Jesus is one of those arms, that Arjuna, that Krishna talked about. The Holy Spirit is one of those arms. Judah is one of those arms. And Jesus was there for me. I remember as a little girl, I could open the Bible by myself in my room and read a verse, and I would feel it leap off the page as if I felt like God Himself had written those words on the page for me. So, unfortunately, there were a lot of dead religious paradigms that told me what and how I should do with that experience. And so, it's still a process of getting free from that. But I had little breadcrumbs all along the way. And like one of those many years later, my daughter was a young adult and she took me to a yoga class. And, I had been taught that yoga was evil and that would be like a really good place to get some demons if you weren't careful. I went out of love for my daughter and wanting to spend time with her. And so I went to this class and the woman teaching it was Buddhist in orientation. And at the end of the class, she had us all laying on the floor and she began to speak in a light language. Well, I the only frame of reference I had for this was speaking in tongues from my charismatic tradition. And it just blew my mind. I thought, "What is this Buddhist pot smoking yoga teacher how is she speaking in tongues? Mine was just like, but the thing was, going back to what we're saying about our body, right? My body felt so open and receptive, and my heart chakra got so warm, and I felt so loved. And I laid there on the floor of that yoga studio and I just started weeping. And there was something about the experience that resonated with me as coming from the source of all love.
Mhm.
And so little experiences like that over time made me open to more of that sifting and sorting, you know?
I relate to that so much. It was a similar thing that really convinced me as well, because I was really involved in the charismatic branch of Christianity. And when you start to find out that all these other, like literally every other mystical religion in the world has the same experiences, the same manifestations, it gets really hard to say, "Mm, that's all fake and only my way is the right way."
Right, and, my the onset of my awakening when my father died, during that time, I started going to see this healer who was an acupuncturist, and there again, my Christian tradition, I would have never gone to an acupuncturist. I would have thought that was
Mhm,
some kind of hoodoo, voodoo, but I went, and because I was desperately sick, and it immediately started feeling better. And then when I would go to my acupuncture appointments while I was lying on the table, I would start to enter in this high state of worship. That was the only reference I had from my charismatic
mhm.
experience. I felt like I was having these major encounters with the Holy Spirit. And my acupuncture treatments felt like times of high corporate worship where I'd been in worship with thousands of people and just swept away into this bliss. So that blew my mind, right?
Mm.
So I used to go home and take my Bible and flip through it and try to figure out how this acupuncture crazy man was doing this to me, you know? And now, several years later, I'm married to him.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
probably another whole story.
Oh, yeah. Great one.
So,
Yeah.
here's a question for you. Having been raised in Christianity and you know how there's a demon behind every bush, especially in charismatic Christianity. And another thing that I've noticed is I've watched a lot of testimonies of people who have moved from the New Age Eastern tradition movement back to Christianity, trying to understand like what's going on here in their experience. One of the main things that they say is that, well, I ended up having contact with evil spirits and it freaked me out. And so they went back to Jesus, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But from your perspective now, is it possible for somebody to have contact with an evil spirit or, is there any kind of discernment needed with things like channeling?
Well, sure. And the simple explanation for it is that that you attract beings that are at your level of consciousness, right? And so I would say most wicked spirits really don't want to be around me, because to be around me would, for them, would be to feel harassed and agitated and angst because of the love that is being emanated, and it just wouldn't feel comfortable for them, right? It would be like a 6 foot tall man trying to drive a Volkswagen Beetle, you know? So, I if I look back over the course of all my experiences, I would say I likely encountered more demonic influence and agitation when I was a Christian than I do now, because now I don't have fear of those beings at all. And so they're not attracted to me, I'm not attracted to them. It's just not a good fit. So I'll share with you a metaphor Judah gave recently about this in an interview. Judah said if you went to a party, let's say a Christmas party, it's holiday season, and there were, let's say, 100 people there. And let's say there were maybe 3 or 4 people there that were drinking themselves under the table and nearly passed out. And then there were other people, that you just immediately felt like a kinship with, and you strike up a conversation, and you realize, oh, this is the one person I really want to get to know at this party. this is somebody that I would be willing to spend time with in the future. So this is how it is with spirits, right? You have a natural affinity or attraction to loving, joyful, high vibrational spirits that are near or at or above your level of consciousness, and the other ones, you're not really attracted to them, they're not really attracted to you. So I don't really have any fear about it. Now, there are times where I have some lower, what I would consider lower consciousness beings that, like a disembodied soul that I recently channeled, who is very distressed and troubled. He called himself the Cherokee brother. But I was there to serve him in love, to help ease, his soul where he's troubled about some things. And I'm happy to do that. But I'm not giving away my power to him, and he's not influencing me. I'm there to serve him in love.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That makes so much sense, especially when you said that you probably encountered more demonic spirits in Christianity because it's such a fear-based environment, right?
Right. Fear attracts fear,
Yeah.
love attracts love. And people have asked me, well, don't you have rituals to make sure you're protected and all that? No, I don't. Because what I know at the end of the day is if some icky thing, energy or spirit or whatever attaches to me, it's because there's something in me that's similar. There's something in my heart still that I haven't surrendered that I need to look at that's similar in nature that's able to attract that. So if that ever happens to me, I use that as an opportunity to look inside and say, okay, what's in my heart that I still haven't healed that is similar to this vibration or this entity. And another simple way to go about it is, if you feel any sort of energy like that, just say, I just release any energies, negative energies or attachments that aren't, of the highest possible vibration. I just release you back to your source with all love and light. And you just send them on their way. And you always have authority. You always have authority over any spirit like that that would try to bother you. Always. You are sovereign over your own being.
I love what you said about looking at yourself to see what in you or me could be attracting that entity. And it takes me back to something that you said at the beginning, where before you began channeling Judah, you were sitting in your chair for 2 years, meditating and doing the inner work. So I guess my final question would be, what advice would you have to anybody, for anyone who's watching who might be wanting to have a deeper spiritual connection or deeper spiritual gifts? What was that process like for you of getting to that point?
Yeah, well, it's, enlightened. I'll say this, enlightened beings. I spent many, many, many countless hours reading and studying and embracing and embodying the teachers of enlightened beings, and use discernment there, right? And know who and what these enlightened beings are. And I decided, Judah taught me early on, go straight to the source, right? So I don't read other people's teachings about Jesus or listen to their preachings or whatever. I go straight to the source and read the actual words of Christ, right? Or I can channel the Christ and just have a relationship directly. The same with the Buddha. There's people that we know definitively, or at least from my perspective, are enlightened beings like Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie, and there are others very highly enlightened beings. So be a student. If Judah resonates with you, or whoever it is that resonates with you, dive into their work, and until it becomes a part of you, part of your DNA, until it transforms you. So being a student of enlightened beings, meditating, and self-inquiry. There are some things that meditation can't undo. There are some things where we have to go in and look at what's going on in our inner being and embracing our parts. So the last thing I would say about that, so listening to enlightened beings, absorbing their teachings, meditating and self-inquiry. And with the self inquiry, what I would say about that is whatever we see inside of us, we just love that part. We fully love and accept ourselves. When we're struggling with something, I don't believe in ego amputation. I don't believe in seeing, some kind of ego construct in ourselves and then trying to just amputate it. I believe in fully loving and accepting whatever's going on with us, our hurting parts, our fragile parts, our angry parts, our broken parts, whatever is in our ego construct. The way we heal it is to love it like we would love a little child. If you had a little child in your life that was afraid, you would love that child. If you had a little child in your life that was struggling with their temper, you would love that child, right? So unconditional love and acceptance for all of our parts, not just the shiny, sweet, blissful, high consciousness ones. That's how we integrate those parts into our higher self.
Angie, thank you so much for everything that you shared with us. Could you share with the viewers where they can find you online and everything that you have going on?
Sure. Judah channel on YouTube. We have hundreds of hours of free videos. We have many people over 1,000 people now who watch everything we put out. And for those who are following these teachings of Judah's, they are receiving major transformations, and these teachings are free. I work with these folks every week, also in personal sessions. I hear them. They're falling over into satori. They are having enlightened, blissful experiences. They are being contacted by angels and archangels. So the Judah channel on YouTube is a place where you can literally go from wherever you are in your journey to your enlightened state. We have a fabulous self-study course called the True You Accelerator, and it's 10 weeks, but you do not have to finish it in 10 weeks. Some people spend a year or 2 or 3 in the course, and you have access to it for a lifetime, and it has everything that I've learned packed into that with tons of channels from Judah. And Judah has assured us that this course is a path to enlightenment for anyone who takes it seriously. And that 85% of the issues that people struggle with in life will be answered by the time they get to the end of that course. And almost all of the folks who take the course end up channeling or having direct contact with angels by the time they get to the end of it. Let's see, what else? Oh, we got all kinds of stuff going on, but just come by and see us. Be a part of our family.
Wonderful. I will have those links in the description. Angie, thank you again so much. I really enjoyed this. The time just flew by. I could have asked twice as many questions.
Oh, I enjoyed it so much. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with your friends, and comment with your thoughts and opinion. And check the description box for the links to my TikTok and Instagram, where I share the more personal side of my life, my website, where I share my paintings and merch, and also the Be a Guest link for anybody who's interested in sharing their story. Be loved, be happy, be at peace, and thank you for watching.